Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Coffee Talk. Today is Thursday, June 18th. I'm Kylie Peck with the Greater Watertown North Country Chamber of Commerce, and this morning we have with us representatives from the U.S. Small Business Administration, BJ Peprocki, District Director, and Dan Rickman, Deputy District Director. And I just want to remind everyone, we are recording this session in case anyone wants to go back and review it or share it with anyone that was not able to join us today. Back in April, we spoke with Dan Rickman, and he provided an overview of the EIDL and PPP programs administered by the SBA, and that was such a great overview, and April seems like a lifetime ago at this point. A lot of businesses in the North Country have been able to take advantage of both of those programs, and we are happy to say that the EIDL platform was reopened this week to businesses that had not already taken advantage of that. Both nonprofit and small businesses can participate in that, and they've also released guidance and some updates to the Paycheck Protection Program, which have expanded kind of the flexibility and the offerings and kind of the guidelines to that for the businesses that are taking advantage. And I will not speak to the details of that in great detail. I'll leave that to the experts for sure. But as far as I know, there are still funds available for that. So if you haven't been able to apply for that, this is a great opportunity to learn a little bit more about the program and speak with your local banking institute about getting involved with that. So without further ado, I would like to introduce BJ Peprocki and Dan Rickman from the SBA. Welcome, gentlemen.
Well, thank you very much for having us on here this morning, Kylie. We really appreciate being able to get out front with some of your members and others of the business community up in the North Country. The importance of partnerships like we have with the SBA and the Greater Watertown Chamber is very important for us in order to get our programs delivered to small businesses. We're just a small office in 34 counties of upstate New York, and without these partnerships like this, we could not help small businesses to the extent at which we do. With that said, it's been quite a ride here for the last few months, as you can possibly imagine. March 27th, the Payroll Protection Program came into effect, and during that first 14 days of that act, the SBA did more loans than it did in 14 years. 1.66 million loans for $350 billion were distributed in 14 days. You have to remember, the SBA is one of the smallest agencies in the federal government. We have around 4,000 employees, most of which are not involved in field work like us. So to accomplish that job was no small feat, and it was not without its problems. April 20, the fund quickly ran out, as you know. And April 27th, Enhanced Payroll Protection Program came into effect. And as of today, we've assisted over 4,500,000 businesses in the country for over $512 billion. This was with the help of over 5,500 lenders, of which almost half of those were new lenders that we had to bring on board, train, bring up to speed with our systems, et cetera, et cetera. No small task, all on its own, getting those lenders on board. Many people describe this whole process as building the plane while you're flying it. And that's exactly what's been happening even up until this week. Last week, with the Flexibility Act for the Payroll Protection Plan, which extended the payment terms from 2 to 5 years on the 1% note, extended the payroll from 8 weeks to 24 weeks, and also reduced the percentage that had to be spent on payroll from 75% to 60%, and the amounts for utilities from 25% to 40%. So all good things that are, happening, making that program more flexible, more user-friendly. The bad part about it all right now, though, is it's over June 30th. So this is a very timely call that we're having this morning. We have about 2 weeks left. We have plenty of money. I think I heard there's about 100 billion, a little over 100 billion dollars left in the fund. So plenty of money to get accessed. I think the process is obviously much more understood now. The applications, we have a new, just came out this week, a new EZ app to calculate forgiveness of the PPP loans, and also a revised full app that has fewer calculations and a lot less documentation to make it easier to apply for the forgiveness portion of the triple P loans. As you mentioned, also this Monday, the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program, more commonly known as EIDL or EIDL, was back open and open for business to all small businesses. Previously, it had just been open to agriculture businesses after the first round was closed due to an overwhelming number of applications that were received. Absolutely shut down the system. And they had to retool that, hire more people, and they're working their way through. So as of Monday, that program is back up and open. Proceeds for debt, payroll, accounts payable, and other bills, 3.75% loan, plus the for 30 years, plus the advance that's good for up to 10K if you have 10 employees. Now, even if you don't get approved for that loan and you apply for the advance, you're going to get the advance. It's a free grant. It's a free money. If you're a sole proprietor, you could at least get $1,000. So it's worth your time to go to sba.gov/disaster, take a look at it, and make an application. Finally, while you're doing all this, I would just like to advise people, folks out there, to be careful of scams. We're seeing plenty of fraudulent activity, misrepresenting either us or lenders to try to get small businesses to fall for certain online scams related to these programs. So if it doesn't say SBA.gov, it says SBA.com or something like that, don't even go there, because it's not the real deal. Just all I'm saying is just buyer beware. And that's pretty much what I got to say for you this morning, except for questions, obviously.
Sure. So like BJ mentioned, the Flexibility Act that was passed last year, made some significant changes to the program. Like BJ mentioned, the covered period, which means the amount of time that you have to spend the funds, was extended from 8 weeks to 24 weeks for all PPP applicants. What that means for people that have already applied and received their PPP funds, you just have you have an extra runway. Okay, if you are at the end of your 8 weeks and you've already met all the requirements under the old rules, you can still apply under the old rules. Okay, you can do whatever, you can take advantage of whichever scenario is most advantageous for your business. Okay. So you're not locked in. You don't have to wait 24 weeks is my point, even though you have more time now to apply for forgiveness. Some of the other big changes are the amount of payroll, like BJ mentioned, the amount of the funds that can be spent on payroll. It was reduced to 60%, a little bit more flexibility, particularly if they're going to take advantage of that 24-week covered period. And then the last thing is there was a significant change to the term for the PPP loans. And it was extended to a 5-year term for all new PPP loans, new after June 5th. So it's not an automatic process for anybody that has already received a PPP loan. You still have a 2-year term, okay, if you got your loan prior to June 5th. However, you can request with of your bank to extend the maturity. It has to be a mutual agreement, so they do have to agree to extend that maturity. But I think it's pretty clear that I think it's pretty clear that particularly with the enhanced flexibility, that there's not an expectation that there's going to be many dollars left over for many businesses. Okay, I think with the all that extra time you have to spend the money, it'd be pretty hard not to get 100% of the loan forgiven at this point. So I think if you want to plan how you're going to spend the funds, it's probably a good idea to take a look at the forgiveness applications now, so you have an idea of the type of information you're going to have to provide to the lender. Certainly, some of it is what you would expect. Your payroll records. Verification that you had eligible expenses like rent and utilities. It's pretty. It's still going to require some documentation, but the forgiveness applications are only calling for verification of the payroll expenses themselves. Okay, so it's fairly straightforward, I think, and it should be easy for most businesses to put together if you keep fairly decent records. I think those are the highlights for the forgiveness. I think one thing I should mention is that it seems that you don't necessarily, while you have 24 weeks to use the funds, you don't necessarily have to wait 24 weeks to apply for forgiveness. What we're hearing is that once you've met the various thresholds, you've spent 60% of the funds on payroll, you've got the other eligible expenses, and you've rehired to the extent that you are able to, that you can apply once you've met those thresholds. And I should point out that the Flexibility Act also provided more flexibility for the rehiring provisions. Okay. Folks are probably aware of the requirement to hire or maintain their pre-disaster full-time equivalent payroll count. With that, there were some safe harbors that SBA and the Treasury Department implemented you would not necessarily be penalized for situations where for example, you make a job offer, they don't come back. Well, that doesn't count against you, right? As long as you document that you made that job offer and reported it to the state, of course, for unemployment purposes. There was also a provision where if you rehired your staff by June 30th, there was a June 30th safe harbor that still exists. So again, all the old rules still apply. And the Flexibility Act added a couple more safe harbors. One is a December 31st safe harbor for rehiring. Okay, so they extended that timeline if you're going to use the 24-week work period. And they also added a provision for circumstances where, due to guidance from CDC, OSHA, other government authorities, if you're simply unable to reach the same level of business as a result of those government advisories with appropriate documentation, that SBA created another safe harbor for situations where you weren't able to rehire as a result of those government actions. So I would encourage you to kind of read through again that forgiveness guidance for those safe harbors for a little bit more clarity, because everybody's situation is going to be a little bit different. And you want to be able to capture that documentation, those advisories, and keep that documentation available if you're going to need it 24 weeks from now. So hope that makes sense.
Thanks, Dan. I just want to make a note here for those that are Watching the Coffee Talk Live, you'll see in the group chat that Liz Lonergan, who is the regional director for the Watertown Small Business Development Center, is including some links that are helpful to the PPP forgiveness app, and then the lender guidelines as well. So thank you, Liz. They're available locally to help out with any of this information as well. So you can get a hold of the SBA directly, or you can work with the local SBDC, and they're an SBA partner and certainly available and able to help you out with any potential questions or issues that you might run into as well. So thanks, Liz, for helping out on the call and getting that information out to the group. There are some questions coming in, and I apologize if you covered some of these in what you were just saying. I was trying to read through and, you know, make some notes here as well. Can you use 100% of the PPP funds for payroll, or are you limited just to the 75 or 60%?
Absolutely. That's a lower threshold. It's a floor for what you can spend the funds on. If you want to spend 100% on payroll, that's encouraged, I think, you know, and it's very consistent with the legislation.
Okay, great. The new guideline for flexibility is pushing the covered period from 8 weeks to 24 weeks. If the applicant elects 24-week period, can they apply for forgiveness once you meet the full loan forgiveness? And you might have just touched on that.
Yeah, it does appear that I said it looks that way because my understanding is that some of that kind of nuanced questions are going to come out probably in the FAQ document that SBA and Treasury have been keeping updated. So if you read the forgiveness application right now, it's not super clear, but that's what we're hearing. So I think folks should keep an eye out for that language to come out with our FAQ. And of course, we're going to continue to send it out to all of our partners as we get updates on that official guidance.
Okay. Do you have to submit any type of application to get your cover period extended from 8 weeks to 24 weeks, or is it automatically extended?
It's automatically extended. It's automatically extended for all borrowers. And I should also mention, I don't think BJ and I touched on it, the deferment period for the PPP loans, all PPP loans, was extended from 6 months to 10 months from the date of disbursement. So that gave folks that, particularly those that applied early on beginning of April, you have a little bit of extra time before the payments and interest kick in. If for whatever reason, you know, the forgiveness process is delayed. And that is also automatic, no requirement to opt in.
All right. Regarding the EIDL program, there's someone who's submitted a question stating that they've had some issues logging in, and when they're calling the SBA, others are experiencing the same issue. They received an email saying that we need to complete the next steps or the application will be withdrawn. Are you aware of others having that issue, and how do we ensure our application is moving forward?
Yeah, so that's a good question. I hadn't heard anything specific. I can only speculate. I know we're not supposed to speculate, boss, close your ears. But you know, I suspect it's we've got a spike in volume right now, you know, with all the publication publicity about the EIDL portal reopening. So I think I can only ask that, you know, you can be a little bit patient, or maybe try and log in either earlier in the morning or later in the day to see if there's a little bit of a less of a load. Much like when all this first kicked off, it took a week or so for things to calm down a little bit and for the websites to catch up. If you just received that notification, you know, you've got plenty of time. Okay. You know, if a week from now or a couple weeks from now you're still having a hard time getting in, then, you know, maybe, you know, you should request an extension. But I believe you have 30 days to verify your information for the loan offer. It's either 30 or 60 days. I'd have to look it up before that offer would be rescinded. So not to worry, just now.
All right. Is a company's forgiveness reduced or affected by the amount of an EIDL grant, especially if the EIDL is used for expenses outside the PPP time period?
Yes. So any EIDL advance grant proceeds that you receive will be deducted from the total amount of forgiveness you're eligible for on the PPP loan. So after you do the forgiveness calculations on the PPP loan and determine what amount you're eligible for, that amount will come out of the forgiveness that's remitted to the bank. So, so if you're eligible for 100%, it's just that comes right off the top for the loan. Okay. So if you, certainly your options at that point, clearly there will be a loan amount left over that will be equivalent to at least the amount of the advance you received. Okay. You'd have the option to either, pay it off immediately with no prepayment penalty, which is always an option with the PPP or the EIDL loan for that matter. Both have no prepayment penalties. Or allow the remaining balance to amortize over the remainder of the term. Okay, so you could pay it off over the remainder of the 2 years or 5 years, depending on the maturity for your PPP loan. So the advantage of the advance is that those funds are more flexible than the PPP funds. The PPP are relatively limited, whereas the advance and the EIDL can be used for any legitimate working capital expense of the business.
Okay, I'm getting a potential suggestion to help us understand, because we aren't all numbers people and we're not dealing with it every day. Is there any way you could translate that into maybe a theoretical but easy number situation so some of us can kind of grasp what that means?
So you've got 10 employees, you get $10,000 for the EIDL advance. Okay. Which hopefully you've had an opportunity to use and help pay your bills, right? And keep your doors open. Meanwhile, you also received, say, $100,000 for a PPP loan, okay? Which you, over at your election, the relevant covered period that you choose, 8 weeks or up to 24, you spend 100% of those funds in an eligible fashion. So you're eligible for 100% of the PPP loan to be forgiven, 100,000, and that's what is inputted into the calculation, and the forgiveness amount will, that is remitted to the bank to pay off your loan balance, because that's literally how it works. SBA will pay off the loan equivalent to the amount of forgiveness you're eligible for. In this scenario, that amount would be reduced by $10,000. So you would have a $10,000 remaining balance on your PPP loan when all is said and done. Okay. And then at that point, again, you'll have the option, if you have, if there's still 10,000 sitting in the bank account, you can pay it off right away. Okay. Otherwise, you have the flexible maturity at 1%, for the, which hopefully would have pretty low payments over the 2 or 5 year term.
Thanks for that. And I just want to ask a question too, specific to the EIDL program. It's my understanding, and for those that maybe who haven't gone through the process, but if you get an advance of $5,000, that is, you don't have to pay that back, it's forgiven. But then if you go through with the loan application itself and you take, say, 25,000, the 5,000 you had originally gotten with the advance comes off of that 25,000. Is that correct?
Yeah, that appears to be the case. It's not explicitly stated, like your loan amount. It won't say 25,000 less 5,000 for the advance, so you only get 20. It'll just say 20. Okay. But if you've received an advance, then it is reducing the total loan amount you're eligible for under the EIDL.
Okay, great.
But I guess that's the part where it's, actually, in fact, an advance.
Sure. If you take the EIDL advance only and do not pursue EIDL loan, is the advance still included in the PPP loan to repay, therefore not tax-free grant?
The advance is always going to be part of the PPP. And I guess you're not repaying the advance, you're repaying the PPP loan. It's just the amount that you're eligible for forgiveness for is reduced on the PPP loan, okay? And again, the advantage to the advance is that those funds are more flexible than PPP.
The money for the advance is all part of the CARE Act. So it's all part of that budgeted amount. It stays together. So PPP and advance are really all coming out of the same pot of money.
Yeah, it's a good way to think about it. But again, the advantage is you can use the EIDL funds for more things than you can the PPP funds. So I guess if a business has any concerns about, paying off whatever that advance amount is on their PPP loan, okay, you can, save those funds. I mean, you can spend 90% of what you're eligible for in the PPP loan, get 90% forgiven, right? And then pay off the remaining balance. Okay, so you can run the numbers so that you're not left with, a loan amount you can't afford. And I'm sure Liz and the SBDC folks will be happy to help you kind of plan that cash flow, so you don't have those loan payments at the end of the PPP period. You don't. That's going to be harmful for your business. You can plan around that cash flow, I guess.
All right, has there been guidance issued for forgiveness of a PPP loan for a self-employed individual with a business that was in operation before February 15th, 2020, but was not in operation in 2019?
So yes, and that's consistent with the loan application itself. So when you applied for the loan, you were provided with, the monthly average for payroll, annualized based on the amount of time your business had been open. Okay, that's still the average that you're going to use to calculate for your sole proprietor compensation. And I guess I should say that if you're a sole proprietor with 0 employees, okay, that the easy application is, well, it's really easy for you because all you're doing is paying yourself essentially, right? So it should be pretty easy to document with the new easy forgiveness application, because you don't have to worry about the FTE count or any of the other concerns that somebody with employees frankly has to. So it should be a little bit easier for you.
All right, great. It's nice that they released that new application process. The guidelines for borrowers forgiveness is posted on the Treasury website. When will the lenders' guidelines be published? The lenders are going to be hesitant to process our forgiveness applications until they know their own requirements for reimbursement.
Well, like a lot of these rules, we don't have heads up on precisely when they're going to come out, so we can't speculate on when they might be published. We'll just ask you to kind of keep an eye out for certainly our communications, and again the Treasury website and our website for when those procedures are posted. I know they're working on it, and it is a priority for them to get them published.
All right. There's a little bit of confusion that we're hoping to get cleared up. If the advance through the EIDL is linked to the PPP and has to be paid back, then it's not a grant.
I think we've covered that. If you have some specific questions, maybe you can give our office a call offline. It's related, but it is still very much a grant.
All right, I'm just going to post the phone number to your office in the chat. And for those that are on via phone call, the phone number for the SBA office is 315-471-0000. 9393.
Oh, and I see a question, related to that, or maybe this was the question. And this is for a scenario where you did not get a PPP loan at all, right? Well, if you didn't get a PPP loan, then there's nothing to, there's no consequence. The advance is forgiven, right? It is a grant. It's only if you get a PPP loan, any amount that you are eligible for forgiveness for will be reduced by it. So you get the advance no matter what. That is forgiven no matter what.
Okay. Let's see. Our EIDL application states processing after we chose the amount of EIDL we would like to take. Is the grant portion going to be in addition to that amount? Nothing has shown up regarding the grant portion during the application process so far.
It won't.
That was an easy answer. If a 501c6 organization took the EIDL advance only and did not pursue the EIDL loan and not eligible for PPP, will this be a loan or a tax-free grant?
It will be forgiven. I can't speak to tax implications. There was the IRS has issued some rules about the tax treatment for some parts of the PPP and the CARES Act items. Specifically, the IRS issued guidance on the PPP loan forgiveness, any expenses that you use the PPP forgiven PPP funds to pay for. You can't also deduct those expenses because you already got the benefit in the form of the loan being forgiven for that amount, okay? So the IRS did publish some rules around that. I'm not sure if they've published all of the nuanced tax treatment guidance for all of the CARES Act items. I believe that the EIDL advance was included in and mentioned as not being treated as income. That's one of those I'll have to get back to you because I don't have the question fresh off the top of my mind.
Okay, great. Maybe you could talk a little bit, we've talked about with the EIDL program, and once you get into that application process and you're approved for loans, there's some thresholds for collateral that goes along with those loans. Could you talk about what those thresholds are? I know there's one, no collateral up to 25,000, and then there's a couple more beyond that. Could you talk a little about that?
Yeah, so the CARES Act modified the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program, which we should say is not a new program. It's been around for decades, okay? But it was enhanced by the CARES Act. That included significantly waiving any requirements for a personal guarantee up to $200,000. So that's where, the business owner additionally guarantees the loan for the business. That is waived up to $200,000. The collateral requirements, they're completely waived up to $25,000 of loan proceeds. And only blanket liens on the business personal property, the business assets, up to, I believe, $500,000. Above $500,000, certainly the loans become more complicated, and we'd have to start taking a look at real estate and that sort of thing above that.
All right. Do we have any other questions from anyone on the meeting today? If we don't, BJ or Dan, do you have any final thoughts to share with us before we wrap up?
Just want to thank you, Kylie, for hosting this today. It's very timely, as I mentioned before, given the fact that the PPP loans are going to be over with at the end of June. So we encourage you, if you're thinking about it, to contact your lenders, or if you need help, and I think you both mentioned the word SBDC, they can be a tremendous help to you in putting together any kinds of documentation or to apply for these things. and we encourage you to use their help. It's free money. It's free help for the most part. And of course, you gave our number out a couple of times. I'm sure everyone had it. 315-471-9393 is our district office number. It's monitored all the time, and we're happy to get back with specific questions that anybody might have. It looks like the EIDL program will probably be open for a little bit longer, and you talked a bit about maybe a fourth round of spending. We don't know that at this point, or can't speculate on it, but if there is, I'm sure they'll be looking at that program as it goes forward to continue helping small businesses through this time. Dan, you got anything else?
Yeah, the only other thing is with that June 30 deadline, that deadline is for the bank to submit an approved complete application to SBA systems and to receive an SBA loan authorization number for that loan, okay? So it would not be reasonable to wait until June 30 the morning to go to your bank to apply for this loan. They're probably not going to be able to get it in time. So if you haven't applied yet, don't wait till June 30. Start working on it right now.
That's a good point.
Well, excellent. Thank you so much again to BJ and Dan for joining us this morning. Thanks for everyone for joining us in the meeting. I hope you have a wonderful weekend. It's Thursday. The weeks are going by quicker and quicker, it seems, each week. But thank you, gentlemen, for joining us. I hope you have a great day. Thanks, everyone, for coming today.
Thanks, Callie. Thanks, everybody.
Have a good one.